In a world where social media dominates every aspect of our lives, you might notice that some of the most devoted Christians are completely absent from platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. While millions share every meal, vacation, and outfit online, these believers have chosen a different path that seems almost radical in today's culture. The contrast is striking. On one side, you have Christians posting selfies at church events and sharing their blessed life moments. And on the other side, you have believers who avoid posting personal photos entirely, believing this approach better reflects biblical principles. Today, we're going to explore 5 biblical reasons why many mature Christians choose not to post photos on social media. These aren't just personal preferences or cultural traditions. These are convictions rooted in Scripture that address modesty, pride, family protection, spiritual influence, and eternal perspective. You'll discover how ancient biblical wisdom applies directly to modern digital challenges. If you want to develop biblical discernment for your own social media choices, subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and comment the country you're watching from so we can see how many nations are seeking biblical wisdom for modern issues. Share this with other Christians who need guidance in this digital age. Now let's examine the first reason that might completely change how you think about social media. The first reason many Christians avoid posting photos relates directly to biblical modesty principles. When the Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Timothy 2:9 that women should adorn themselves in modest apparel with propriety and moderation, he established a standard that extends far beyond Sunday morning church clothes. The Greek word kosmios, translated as modest, literally means orderly and well-arranged, suggesting that how we present ourselves should reflect inner spiritual order and respect for God's design. Social media photos, by their very nature, focus attention on physical appearance and often encourage the very opposite of modest presentation. The challenge with posting photos on social media is that platforms are specifically designed to showcase appearance and lifestyle in ways that often contradict biblical modesty. Even seemingly innocent photos can be viewed with impure motives by others, and the person posting has no control over who sees their images or how they're interpreted. 1 Corinthians 10:31 reminds us that whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. Many believers question whether posting personal photos truly glorifies God or simply feeds vanity and draws attention to the flesh. What's particularly concerning is how social media algorithms actually reward more revealing or attention-grabbing content with higher visibility and engagement. This creates pressure to compromise modesty standards for the sake of likes and comments. The Bible warns in 1 Peter 3:4 that our beauty should not come from outward adornment, but from the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. Constantly posting photos for public consumption can subtly shift focus away from developing this inner beauty that God values most. Consider how different the social media landscape would look if Christians truly applied Philippians 4:8, which instructs us to think on things that are pure, lovely, and of good report. Many believers have decided that avoiding photo posts altogether eliminates the temptation to compromise these standards and removes the risk of causing others to stumble. They recognize that true biblical modesty isn't just about clothing. It's about the heart attitude behind how we present ourselves to the world, and social media often encourages the exact opposite spirit that Scripture promotes. But modesty concerns are just the beginning of why many Christians step back from photo sharing. The next reason we'll examine goes even deeper into the spiritual dangers of social media, addressing an issue that Jesus himself warned would be particularly dangerous for believers. The second biblical reason many Christians avoid posting photos strikes at the very heart of human nature, the battle against pride and vanity. Jesus warned in Luke 14:11 that whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Social media platforms are essentially pride-feeding machines, designed to generate validation through likes, comments, and shares. When Christians post photos of themselves, their families, or their lifestyles, they often unknowingly participate in a system that encourages the very pride that Scripture consistently condemns. The Apostle Paul understood this spiritual danger when he wrote in 2 Corinthians 10:18, "For not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends." Social media photo sharing is fundamentally about self-commendation, presenting the best version of ourselves for public approval. Even seemingly humble posts like "blessed to be at church" or "grateful for God's goodness" can mask deeper motivations for recognition and praise from others. The immediate feedback loop of social media engagement can become addictive, creating a constant hunger for human validation that competes directly with seeking approval from God alone. Scripture is remarkably clear about the spiritual danger of seeking human praise. In John 12:43, we read about people who loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. Social media amplifies this temptation exponentially, allowing us to broadcast our lives to hundreds or thousands of people simultaneously. Many mature Christians recognize that the very act of curating and posting photos for public consumption feeds vanity, even when done with seemingly good intentions. The question becomes, are we posting to genuinely encourage others, or are we seeking affirmation and admiration for ourselves? But that's not even the most concerning aspect of social media's impact on Christian character. The deeper issue is how constant photo sharing can gradually reshape our priorities and values. When we become accustomed to documenting and sharing our lives for public consumption, we often start living for the photo opportunity rather than living in genuine relationship with God and others. The Bible warns in Galatians 6:3 that if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Social media can fuel exactly this kind of self-deception, making ordinary life seem impressive through careful presentation and filtering. The wisest believers understand that true humility, as described in Philippians 2:3, doing nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, is nearly impossible to maintain while actively seeking attention and validation through photo sharing. This leads us directly to our third reason, which reveals an even more serious concern that affects not just individual believers, but their entire families. The third biblical reason many Christians avoid posting photos centers on the sacred responsibility to protect their families, which Scripture presents as a fundamental duty that many believers are unknowingly compromising through social media. Proverbs 27:14 warns that he who blesses his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it will be counted a curse to him. This ancient wisdom directly applies to modern social media, where publicly broadcasting family details, even positive ones, can actually bring harm rather than blessing to those we love most. The Bible consistently presents the family as a protected unit that requires wisdom and discretion to guard properly. In 1 Timothy 5:8, Paul states that anyone who doesn't provide for their own family has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. This provision includes not just financial support, but protection from spiritual, emotional, and physical dangers. When Christians post family photos online, they often expose their children and spouses to risks they haven't fully considered, including predators who use social media to gather information about potential victims, and spiritual influences that can negatively impact family members who didn't consent to public exposure. The digital age has created entirely new categories of danger that previous generations never faced. Family photos shared on social media can reveal location patterns, family schedules, economic status, and detailed information about children's appearances, schools, and activities. Predators and criminals actively use this information to target families. But beyond physical dangers, there are spiritual considerations that many Christians overlook. When family life becomes content for public consumption, it can subtly shift family priorities away from genuine relationship building and toward maintaining an image for others to admire. What's particularly troubling from a biblical perspective is how social media photo sharing often violates the principle found in Matthew 6:3-4, where Jesus teaches that our good deeds should be done in secret, so that our Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Many family activities that should be precious private memories between family members and God become performances for a social media audience. Children grow up learning to live for the camera rather than learning to live authentically before God. The Bible calls parents to train up a child in the way he should go, Proverbs 22:6. And many believers question whether constant photo documentation and social media exposure is truly the way children should be trained to live. Biblical wisdom demands that we consider not just immediate gratification, but long-term consequences for those under our care. This protective instinct leads to our fourth reason, which addresses how our online choices can spiritually impact other believers in ways we might never anticipate. The fourth biblical reason why many Christians choose not to post photos relates to the sobering responsibility we have for how our actions affect other believers. Romans 14:13 commands us to resolve never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother. And 1 Corinthians 8:9 warns us to take care that this right of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. Social media photos, regardless of our intentions, can create spiritual struggles for other believers in ways we might never realize or consider. When Christians post photos of their lifestyle, vacations, possessions, or even their appearance, they can inadvertently fuel envy, covetousness, or feelings of inadequacy in others who view their content. The Bible takes these sins seriously. Covetousness is explicitly forbidden in the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20:17, and envy is listed among the works of the flesh in Galatians 5:19-21. A believer scrolling through social media and seeing others' carefully curated highlight reels can struggle with contentment, comparison, and spiritual discouragement, even when the original posters had pure motives. The Apostle Paul provides the perfect example of this principle in 1 Corinthians 8, where he discusses eating meat offered to idols. Paul acknowledges that eating such meat isn't inherently sinful, but he chooses to abstain because it might cause weaker believers to stumble. He concludes in verse 13, "Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never again eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble." Many mature Christians apply this same logic to social media photos. Even if posting isn't inherently wrong, they choose to abstain because they recognize the potential for causing others to struggle spiritually. This concern becomes even more serious when we consider how social media algorithms work. Photos that generate the most engagement are shown to more people, meaning that content which might cause others to stumble gets amplified across platforms. A photo that causes one person to struggle with envy or lustful thoughts can be shown to hundreds or thousands of others who might face similar temptations. The Bible warns in Matthew 18:7 that woe to the world because of stumbling blocks, and pronounces serious judgment on those who cause others to sin. But perhaps most concerning is how social media photo sharing can contribute to the shallow, appearance-focused culture that many believers are trying to escape. When Christians participate in the constant image-sharing cycle, they can inadvertently reinforce worldly values about beauty, success, and worth, even within church communities. 1 John 2:15-16 clearly instructs believers not to love the world or the things in the world, specifically mentioning the pride of life as something that is not of the Father but is of the world. Many Christians recognize that social media photo culture is driven primarily by this very pride of life that Scripture warns against, leading us to our final and most compelling reason. The fifth and most profound reason many Christians avoid posting photos on social media relates to the fundamental biblical principle of focusing on eternal rather than temporal things. In 2 Corinthians 4:18, Paul instructs believers to look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Social media photo sharing, by its very nature, focuses attention on temporal, visible things, our appearance, possessions, experiences, and achievements, while often distracting from eternal spiritual realities. The Bible consistently calls believers to a different set of priorities than what the world values. Colossians 3:2 commands us to set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. And Matthew 6:19-20 warns against laying up treasures on earth while encouraging us to lay up treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. When Christians spend time and energy curating their social media presence through photos, they often invest in exactly the kind of earthly treasures and worldly approval that Scripture warns will ultimately prove worthless. The spiritual danger is subtle but profound. Social media photo sharing can gradually shift our focus away from developing Christ-like character and toward maintaining an attractive image for others to admire. Instead of growing in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, the fruits of the Spirit listed in Galatians 5:22-23, believers can become preoccupied with documenting and sharing the external aspects of their lives. The time spent taking, editing, and posting photos could be invested in prayer, Bible study, serving others, or building deeper relationships with family members without the distraction of documenting everything for public consumption. Many mature Christians recognize that social media photo culture promotes exactly the opposite mindset from what Scripture encourages. Instead of learning to be content in all circumstances, Philippians 4:11-13, social media encourages constant comparison and dissatisfaction. Instead of developing inner beauty that comes from relationship with God, 1 Peter 3:34, it emphasizes external presentation. Instead of learning to do good works in secret for God's glory alone, Matthew 6:1-4, it encourages public recognition and praise. The most sobering aspect of this issue is found in Matthew 16:26, where Jesus asks, "For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?" Many believers question whether building a social media following and gaining online admiration might actually be a form of gaining worldly recognition at the expense of spiritual depth. They choose instead to invest their time and energy in activities that build eternal value, serving others without recognition, growing in biblical knowledge, developing authentic relationships, and pursuing holiness that may never be seen or applauded by the world. These 5 biblical reasons reveal why many mature Christians choose to avoid posting photos on social media, from concerns about modesty and pride to protecting family privacy, avoiding stumbling blocks for others, and maintaining eternal perspective. The Bible warns in 1 John 2:15-17 that the love of the Father is not in him who loves the world and its desires, which pass away. That's why developing biblical discernment about social media use is crucial for spiritual growth and authentic Christian living. In our next video, we'll explore 5 social media practices that many churches are promoting, but that actually contradict biblical principles, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 reasons resonated most with your heart? Comment below along with the country you're watching from. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with other Christians who need this biblical wisdom for navigating social media. May God bless you and guide you toward choices that honor Him in every area of life.